Hey everyone, it's Reaper and I'm back. I'm making this video right after the last one that I just released, so no change in wardrobe. um, I don't know how long this video is going to be. Who knows, I might go on another rant. Not an offensive rant though. Not an offensive rant. So basically, last week I've been hearing a buzz, I'm on some of Facebook and all that stuff about Morbius. And all of a sudden, I'm saying to myself, what's going on with Morbius? I didn't really read into it. I was like, oh, I heard Morbius. Oh, Morbius this, Morbius that. But I didn't really read into it. The fact that, what we all now know, Morbius is supposed to get a movie or something like that. And I talked about it with a couple people, Patrick and Nick and all that stuff. And once again, here we go. Hot book alert. And, hey, I like Amazing Spider-Man 101. Well, if you watched my videos, you know it was one of my favorite books. I love the cover. I love Gil Kane artwork on that cover. I love the story. I like the character. So cool. It'd be nice to see Morbius. I would prefer to see him as a support character before they throw him in his own movie, but that's just me. I'm not Hollywood. I don't have all the great ideas that they have or any of those other things that they're going through right now, thankfully. But I think it's pretty cool. So what does this mean? Well, guess what? Amazing Spider-Man 101, I guess, got a bit of a spike. I don't know how much of a spike. I haven't really been doing the research on it. So maybe you out there can fill me in on how much it was. But I remember Amazing Spider-Man 101 up a few years ago. An 8.0 copy could run you maybe a little over 100, maybe 120, depending on where you look. I mean, it's obviously there are always inflated prices on everything. But, yeah, I remember it was running for that. Now, I don't know what 8.0 is going for. I would imagine probably in the neighborhood. Like I said, I didn't do my research on this, but I'm just willing to make a prediction. Probably in the 400 to 500 range in 8.0, I'm thinking. Could be wrong. Correct me if I am. But the point is, it's a hot book. Okay. Let me talk a little bit about what was a hot book back when I first started collecting. This is year 2, 1994. So whenever you hear me talk about when I first started collecting, I say year 2, I mean 94, year 1, 93, year 3-ish, 95, 96, stuff like that. Back in year 2, we had, we get the Wizard magazine, you see the hot books, the top 10 hot books, but there was a storyline that was starting in the Marvel Universe, in the Spider-Man series, that made a certain book very hot. And when I say very hot, I mean like from dollar bin material to wall book material, like just like that overnight. Does anybody remember, if those that remember back then or have collected back then, the Clone Saga? Do you remember that Clone Saga where Ben Reilly and all that stuff, where the storyline was that Spider-Man back in the 70s, well, the 70s when it first came out, the book, was fighting a clone that the Jackal created. And at the end of the story, he defeated the clone. And you think it was the real Spider-Man that defeated the clone. And they did this clone storyline in the 90s where, well, it wasn't the Peter Parker that we know that defeated the clone. It was actually the clone that defeated Peter Parker, or something to that effect. Well, anyway, the fans found out about that and they shit. It was just horribly received. And I think they retconned that, where it was actually the clone that won. I think they found out that no, actually it was really Peter Parker, because it got such a negative backlash. But when this started happening, before we found that out, when the Clone Saga, they were bringing back the clone and all that stuff, it was big talk when it comes to Spider-Man fans. And a hot book, like I alluded to a few moments ago, that went from like dollar bin material. I don't know if it was in the dollar bin. I'm just saying that to, for dramatic purposes, but was pretty much dollar bin material that shot up to wall book. I'm talking like $200, $300, depending on the condition, was this book. And this was one of the first times in my collecting history where I bought into the hype. And I think I spent a lot of money on this back then, I think. I don't remember how much. Not crazy, but I spent a decent amount on this book. This was Amazing Spider-Man 149, where the clone was first introduced and supposedly killed. This book back in 1994, or right around the time when that Spider-Clone saga started, was white hot. You couldn't find it anywhere. People were buying it, snatching it up, and it was selling for a decent amount of money. Now, we didn't have eBay back then in 1994 to see to you know gauge the prices the way we can today. Morbius sold for $90 a couple months ago. Now it's selling for 200, 300, depending on the grade. But man, that book just went up. And how do I know it went up? Because the dealers were telling me. The dealers were telling me that, yeah, this was a cheap book. They didn't say how cheap, but I would willing to bet it was probably like $1 or $5 bin book. Because Spider Clone, never heard from him again. It was the death of the Jackal. And I think that was, was it the death of the Jackal? I think. But yeah, back in my day, this thing was a hot book. And a lot of people, I won't want to say everyone, I did, bought into the hype. And this book, what is it worth today? I don't really know, but I'm willing to bet you it's not worth a whole lot, because sometimes I follow these Facebook pages for stores or whatever that sometimes sell this book. And, in decent shape, right? It's not going for that much. It's certainly not going for what I paid for, or what I think I paid for back in 1994. So the point here is, though, sometimes when a hot book, don't necessarily buy into the hype. I mean, I know we all still do. Sometimes I do. Sometimes maybe you do. But just try to be a little careful. It's not the be-all, end-all if you don't get the latest hot book. Like, oh, it's never going to be cheap again. You don't know that. You don't know that. Okay, let's say this book went up to $200 and it's hot and everyone's buying it. $200, $250. And then after a movie, or because maybe a movie announcement or whatever, then after the movie, it's most likely going to go down. Will it go down to what it was beforehand? Maybe a $5 book? Probably not. But it has the potential to go down pretty cheap, so you don't necessarily have to buy into the hype. Okay, sort of like what I talked about in my last video on my rant about Iron Fist. I think it's still an expensive book for sure, but I don't think it's not as expensive. And this could be said about all these different characters, whether they're villains or even some heroes. After the movie comes out or after the TV show is done, it cools off a bit. So if you're a person that's worried about your finances, you're a new collector, and you say, oh, I see all these videos, and I can't afford some of these books. I'd like to get these hot books. I'd like to get the first appearance of Morbius. And now, what does this mean? I have to spend this amount of money? You don't, not necessarily. Just sometimes waiting for it to die down is worth it. You may have to wait a little long, and I know sometimes we don't want to wait, right? But sometimes patience does pay off. Patience can be a virtue for a lot. Okay, so that's just something to keep in mind, and a little story I wanted to share about a hot book that I first bought into back in 1994. I really don't know what this thing is worth. I don't think it's worth, my copy at least, I don't think this is worth more than maybe $20. I think I have like a 6.0. I'd say it's a good 6.0 just by looking at it here. I know, I'd have to give it a further inspection, of course, but I think it's about a 6.0. I don't, maybe $20 is too much. I don't know. But just be careful. Be careful with your money. Be careful buying into the hype. I would want to end this on like, well, how could we speculate? What do you think the next hot book's going to be? It could be anything. Anything. Squirrel Girl, remember her? Isn't she going to be in a movie or a TV show or something like that? Who the hell would have thought Squirrel Girl would have been anything? But that book is selling for a decent amount of money. It's not selling for a whole lot of money, but it's a hell of a lot more than what it was maybe a few years ago. It's just, before you jump the gun and spend a whole lot of money on characters like that, D-list characters, just be careful. Just be a little patient. Try to focus in on other characters that may not suffer as much as some of these other characters like the Spider Clone. Of course, everyone's different, Or Doctor Doom. Doctor Doom has always been an expensive book, right? But since the announcement that he might have his own movie, oh, God. Doctor Doom's own movie. As cool as that sounds, but could they at least get Fantastic Four right first? Jeez. Now that book is going for a crazy, crazy amount of money. Uh, I mean, thousands. Over 1,000 for a low-grade piece of shit copy. I mean, wow. Hmm. I mean, I know it's Doctor Doom, and it's Marvel's really. Marvel has a lot of great villains. But if I had to create a top five of Marvel bad guys, not by how strong they are or anything like that, but just top Marvel-esque villains that are just definitely Marvel. That when you think of top tier DC villains, I think of Lex Luthor, I think of the Joker. They just come to mind, right? You know, when I think of Marvel, Doctor Doom, I think is number one, personally. And there are a couple others, of course, but definitely Doctor Doom is Marvel's Lex Luthor or whatever it is. But sometimes you just got to be a little patient and wait for the hype to go down. All right. Hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you for watching again, and I will see you all out there.